Hey guys, so here we are back in PixInsight, and we'll try to uh, align our third image. So remember, we were struggling a little bit with the second image, but as it turns out it used to, or it was caused by user error. So let's see if we can do better this time. And so as you remember, we have already processed our 187 file and our 090 file. So the next file up seems to be the F200 file. So we'll start by opening that up in the PixInsight application. So here we are, it's reading it. And just give it a few moments. Fairly large file, maybe 5 gigabytes, I think. So it's processing the input file. And what we're expecting to see, if this is similar to previous files, is that we'll have multiple layers inside the fits file, of which the first one will be our image of interest, and all the other layers, we'll review them really quickly. So there are 8 layers in total, apparently. And we'll just go ahead and review them here with the auto stretch function. So this is not something we want. This is also not something we're interested in. And this one, no. This one, it isn't. This one, it isn't. And this one, let me just review it. No. It does seem to be some compilation of different, like a mosaic of different images that I used to combine. So we'll not be using that. And this last image is what we're expecting to be using. I think it is. There are a whole lot more stars in this image, in this wideband image, than in the previous image. So okay, so that's looking interesting. We see that it that doesn't seem to line up perfectly. So we'll go ahead and go through our 2 different things that we want to do here. One of which is we like to apply our histogram stretching function, and the second one is to do the star alignment. So just before we continue, I'd like to draw this preview box. So because we know we're going to be using that for our image alignment, so that'll be something like that. And I think that's good enough for our matching. So we'll leave it at that. So the first thing to do is we'll reset this auto stretch screen transfer function. And so now it's dark, and we need to go to our, what was it called, an intensity transformation and histogram transformation. And there we are. We'll make sure that the layer that we have selected is our 200W layer. That's the one we'll be working on. So with the check mark, we'll lock it to that. Let's enable our preview so we see what we're doing. So this is our preview, and we'll go ahead and stretch this a little bit. And we'll apply it. So that's where we are now. And do this a little bit more. I'm actually a little bit surprised. Let me undo this. I'm a little bit surprised on where this is going. So I'll go to image and undo the transformation. And okay, so we're back at the original. And the reason I got confused is we didn't, start at the beginning. Somehow the histogram was already set for some kind of value, so we'll go again and process, go to the intensity transformations, histogram transformation, and I think what I'll have to do here is I'll have to apply a reset first. So okay, so now I'm in a place that I'd like to be. So I'll make sure that I'm looking here at the 200 image. I'll enable our preview, and we'll start now by moving our slider here, the middle slider, towards the left in order to bring out our histogram. So you'll see that it actually starts to come out. We won't exaggerate it here. We'll simply go ahead and apply it, and there it is. So we'll reset the function here, and we'll do this iteratively until we get to the place where we want to be. So I think, I don't know, something like that looks a lot better. Actually, we don't want to make the image too bright, because we're going to be using these images for overlays. So maybe we'll try to keep the histogram a little bit on the, in the left quadrant, let's say. So let's say maybe something like this would be good. There's no particular reason to do anything with the black point here, I think. Let's just double check. Or maybe it would be nicer to have, yeah, actually let's apply a little black point correction here as well. So at the end of the day, this is all a little bit subjective, and we'll play with it until we're happy with it. We just like to avoid making this too bright, because these brightness values are gonna start multiplying when we start to layer our image in Photoshop. So when we're happy with it, we'll actually I still need to apply this to this image here, and so I did, and I think that looks pretty good. So we'll call it a day for the histogram transformation, and we'll close it. And so what we'd like to do next is to see if we can align this image perfectly. It's now somewhat misaligned, and we already know from experience that it's very important here to use the zoom to optimal fit function. So we'll make sure that's applied to both images. Zoom to optimal fit, which it is. And we're now ready to do the star alignment process. And we'll go here and to our process menu and go to the pre-processing and use the star alignment function. Now this will still remember our previous settings, and if we wanted to, we could reset everything to default, which we'll do, why not. So here at the bottom right it says reset, so it now clears any settings that we might have changed. So what we'll need to do here is choose our reference image, and our reference image is the same as always, which is our 187 reference image, and that's fine. We make sure in this case, I'm not going to generate drizzle data. Maybe we'll do that in the next video to see if that makes any difference. So, but I'll just turn it off for now. And here in the star matching section, I make sure to check that my algorithm is restricted to the previews. So what it's doing with that is that in order to match these two images to each other, it's only going to be searching inside these green boxes that I have previously defined. So that this whole process is much quicker and easier, so it doesn't struggle as much. And okay, I think we should go ahead and just run it. So the way to do that is to use this triangle and just drop it on the image that we'd like to match to our reference image. So the idea is we'll match the F200W image to our F187N image. So I'll drop the triangle now, and with that it'll start processing. So we already saw this several times before, and that first is going to process the F187 preview, the green rectangle. So it's doing that. So I know that takes 10-20 seconds or something. And let's just go ahead. We already know that we're expecting 4,000 something stars in here because we did this before. Yep, 4,396 stars found. And we're expecting, since this new image does appear to show some more stars. So wideband image, so more light is getting in, so we're simply expecting more and more stars to show up here. So more than 4,000, so let's see what it finds. And there we are. I think 7,800 stars. So that's more than we found previously, so that's kind of cool. So it did its thing. Let's just review what it did. And so it found 600 matches and calculated the transformation. And so it decided that the image had to be moved sideways by 54.89 pixels. It had to be moved down by 65.2 pixels, and it had to be rotated by 0.65 degrees. And you'll see that these numbers are different than the previous image. I mean, all of these images are shifted and rotated just a little bit. And actually they're also scaled a little bit. We didn't talk about that previously, but in the x direction, the scaling is a factor of 1.0078. So it's just like, I don't know, almost 1% larger or smaller rather, because it needs to be scaled up. And the same applies to the y scale. So there's a scaling factor here, there's a rotation, and there's a translation both in the x and the y direction. So you can imagine if you wanted to do this manually in Photoshop or some other place, that's very hard to achieve. And so let's minimize our input image, and let's move this out of the way here. And so I'm just curious now, if I drag this image onto the other one, if we get a good match. And I think, at first glance, it looks perfect. So it kind of snaps into place, and really it seems like the entire object is very well aligned. So I'm very happy with the results here. And so I'm ready to save this file to a TIFF file. So I'll choose Save As. So again, you'll see that in the suggested file name it appends the underscore registered to it. But other than that, it's our F200W file as a TIFF file. No, Save As file is TIFF. So go ahead and save it. Make sure to select here the 16-bit unsigned integer. I mean, we could use here the 32-bit versions and use that in Photoshop, but in my experience in Photoshop, when we have these 32-bit images, there are some kinds of things that you cannot do. Like for example, the curve adjustments or the level adjustments, in my experience, won't work on the 32-bit images. So then you'd have to convert them in Photoshop to 16-bit images, and then continue from there. So just to avoid this extra conversion step, I'll just stick with 16-bit images for now, until we see a reason to switch to 32-bit, which we might consider to do in the future anyways, because more bits gives us more resolution, let's say more leeway to avoid banding in our images, so that'll always be better. But for the time being, we'll just stick with 16-bit images. So we'll save it, and it did, and we're done with that. And so this went a whole lot smoother than before. And so just reviewing, we now have 3 TIFF images. So the original one is our 187. Let's resort them. So we have our 187, we have our 90, and we have our 200. So the next one we can process now is our 335 image. And what's interesting here is that we'll find that this image is somewhat smaller in size. You know, the other ones were 5 gigs, whereas this new one is less than 1 gig. So that's a lot smaller image. So either there's much fewer layers inside, or the resolution of the file is much lower. And I expect the latter to be the case. So let's just go ahead and do this, do the same procedure to this 335 file. So I'll just go ahead and open it in Pix Insight. And it does seem to process quicker, as you can see. And just close this star alignment window here. And we'll go through the same procedure. So I'll just repeat it. It's a good exercise. So let's just auto stretch this image to see what we're... this looks very promising. So, but this is not the layer we'll need. We'll want the first layer, which is all the way at the back. That's the first layer that opened. So we'll close this one. Yeah, this is all this mosaicing going on. So you don't need any of those. You don't need this one. You don't need this one. You don't. Let's just double check what this is. No, you can see this all these mosaics of different images. No, you don't want it. So this is probably the one that we're looking for. So, that's looking very promising. So, yeah, same kind of thing. You can see it's significantly cropped compared to the other image. So, it's going to be interesting in the mapping part. In fact, we're going to have to do something here, maybe with the preview window, because it might not quite fit. But let's just play with it and see how that works. So, first thing is we'll undo this auto stretch for the preview. And let me actually close here this other window, so we won't need this anymore. So, alright, so we're in the 335 window, and we'll make sure here that we have our zoom to optimal fit. We already know that that's important. So I think it's set by default. So by default there's nothing to do there, but if you somehow were to manually resize this window, which I did initially, then you get into trouble when you're trying to fit these things. So best to reset it to zoom to fit and work from there. So first thing we'll do here is again our histogram correction. So we'll go here to our intensity transformation and histogram transformation. We'll make sure to reset this before we start and do anything. And we'll select our view of interest. So that'll be our 335 view, and that's fine. I want to see this in preview mode so I can see what I'm doing. And we'll go through our exercise of making our correction here. And we'll first start like this. This looks fine, so I'll apply it to my window. I have to reset my preview, and maybe I'll do something here with my black point, just a little bit, and use a slider a little bit more, stretch it a little bit more. Again, I don't want to make it too bright because we're going to be overlaying these images in Photoshop. I'll just keep my histogram a little bit contained in the left part of the image. So make sure to remember to apply it, which we did. I'll close my preview window, and I'm happy with that. So the image now has been stretched. We're now ready for our preview part of it. So let's go ahead and define our preview mode. So I suppose it might go a little bit towards the edge here. So I think we might have to go here and make this a little bit smaller, because this new image is definitely kind of stretched. Does that look like it's a reasonable fit? No, still needs to be a little bit smaller. A little bit hard to see here, but I don't know. Perhaps that's close enough. No, it's not exactly perfect. So let me just go ahead and make this a little bit smaller, like that. So I don't know. Does that look reasonable? Yeah, I think so. It's more or less. I mean, 90% of it seems to coincide. So we're ready now to, having these two preview boxes, we're ready now to process, go to pre-processing. We already know where to find this thing and do the star alignment. And I don't think there's any need to reset it. We already selected our reference image, which is fine. That's our 187 image. It's our reference. And we'll keep everything the same. There's no changes here. So just process it and drop this triangle on the 335 image. And go ahead and do that. I mean, that's how you ordinarily would use it, I imagine. I mean, you're not going to reset in 5 different layers or 6 different layers, reset this thing the whole time and then re-click the same options. Doesn't make too much sense. So we can just keep the same options and just see what it finds. So hopefully it'll work out of the box. So we're expecting in our reference image to find 4,000 something stars. We've done this before. And actually it's a little bit less. And that kind of makes sense because we made our preview window a little bit smaller. So it being smaller, we're cutting out some stars that we had previously. And so, yeah, calculated all kinds of stuff. So let's just review what it found. And so it did calculate a translation. So in the X direction, we needed to shift it 28 pixels to the right. In the Y direction, we needed to shift it 63.64 pixels down. We needed to rotate the image by 0.96 degrees. And the interesting thing is we needed to scale the image up by a factor of 2.036. So the image was, at a resolution that is twice as low as before, basically. So that's what happened. So let's just minimize the source image here and move this out of the way and see how the alignment ended up. I think it snaps into place. I'm just trying to keep my eye on some of the objects. But yeah, I have the impression that it snaps nicely into place. So for example, now keep your eye on these 4 stars here. So I'm moving it, and you can see it snaps really just in place. So that's a significant transformation. I mean, we scaled this image up by a factor 2. We rotated a little bit and we shifted it in both the X and the Y direction. So all kinds of stuff was happening in order to make this alignment. And so we're happy with it, and we'll save this file to a TIFF file. And again, you can see that in the suggested file name, it appends the underscore registered to the name. And this is our 335 filter. So cool, very good with that. So we'll save it. We already know to pick here the 16-bit unsigned integer, and we'll save it. That's where we are. You can close this file, don't need it anymore. You can close this file, don't need it anymore. So we're making some progress. So you can see, as the more you do this, you better get at it. This requires some practice. So in summary, we now have the 90, the 200, we have the 335, we have the 187. So we did 4 out of 6 files already. And so the only ones left to do are the F444 and the F470. So since we're in, making some good progress, let's try to finish all of them. So we're done with that. So we'll proceed now with the F444. We'll drag it here into my PixInsight window. You can see that it's reading the file. So far so good. There's 8 layers in there, as you can see here in the window. So it'll open here all the layers. And here we are. Let me just close this star alignment menu here. So we're already expecting the first layer out of the 8 layers to be the one. So the first layer is the one that opened first and is all the way at the back. So let's just work our way from the back to the front. So we'll preview this. Yeah, that's cool, but it has all these artifacts. So close it. This also has mosaicing effects. Don't need it. This is something else that doesn't seem like we need it, so we'll close it. Some more mosaicing. Let's just review this. No, this also has the mosaicing inside. And so this is the last, or the first layer rather. And yeah, so that's the one we need. So let's get rid of the auto scaling for the preview. And we'll go now through the same exercise in that we want to do the intensity transformation. So we go to our histogram transformation, make sure to reset it. So now we're starting to get into the hang of things. So it's now our 444 image that we'll be working with. I want to get my preview and we'll go through the same exercise. We'll move here our midpoint and move it to somewhere around here. I'll just apply it. Now we can do this iteratively. Reset the preview and we can move it just a little more. We'll actually set our black point as well and slide this over a little bit. And again, we make sure that it's not too bright. We just kind of try to keep this histogram in the first quadrant of the image. I mean, there's still some high intensity objects here, that are spilling into the second quadrant. But we're kind of leaving the third and the fourth quadrants of the histogram free because we know that we'll be multiplying these layers inside Photoshop. So I prefer to have a little leeway there. So let's make sure to apply this last transformation here. Let's close our preview window. So I think that looks fine. And we'll close this. And again, we see the same kind of thing, that this image is, cropped compared to the original image. And knowing that the file size was a lot smaller, let's just go to the file manager and confirm that. Yeah, that's way smaller than the original image. So that's also probably scaled by a factor 2. A much lower resolution image. I wonder if it tells me, just out of curiosity, see what kind of image size that it has. So yeah, that's only 7,000 by 4,000 pixels. I think the original ones were 14,000 pixels, twice as much. So cool. So what we'll need to do here is again to draw our preview window. So I'll do that and draw it somewhere around here. Probably need to align this a little bit better. So it has to be smaller, more to the side. Oh, no, it has to be a little bigger. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, doesn't have to be perfect. I think if you're like 90% overlap or something, you'll be fine. So knowing now that this is our preview window in which we're going to be looking for star matches, we're ready now to go to our processing, pre-processing, and star alignment. It'll still have our previous settings, which is our reference image, which we know is going to be our 187. So 187 is our reference image. We're not using any drizzling for now, and we do restrict everything to the preview. So everything is still set as it was before. Didn't change anything. And so let's just try and process this image. And it'll go through the same kind of thing. If I seem to remember correctly, there were over 3,000 stars in the first preview, the 187 preview window. So we'll wait for it to find the same number, I think. I mean, if everything is the same, it didn't change anything, we're expecting the same results, right? So, see what it found. 3,720 stars. That's nice. We'll go ahead in the second image. Yeah, so found all kinds of stuff and is calculating the transformation. So, and that's where it is. A new file. So let's just review here the results. So it did find, because the new image apparently is more bright, it found 4,108 stars in there. It did some matching and calculations and whatnot, and it found that we need at the end of the day the following transformation, which is a shift of 26.61 pixels to the right in the X direction. We need to shift it down by 68.72 pixels. We need to rotate it by 1.05 degrees. And then we need to multiply the X scale by 2.033, and we need to multiply the Y scale by 2.026. So it does all that by combining all this information into a transformation matrix, which is what we're seeing here, the projective transformation matrix. And so it kind of encodes all this information inside this one matrix. And it'll use that matrix to multiply this image, the input source image, and calculate this new image. So let's minimize this guy, our source image. And this was our resulting image, so let's see if that's a good match. And I think it is. I'm trying to keep my eye here again on these 4 stars there. And I think we're good. I mean, looking at several features of this image, I think it does snap into place. So I think we're good. So let's remember to save this file as a TIFF image. And as before, it suggests now to append the underscore registered to the file name, and we're exporting to a TIFF image. We'll indicate that it's a 16-bit unsigned integer image. That's fine. So we'll save it, and we're good. So we did 5 out of 6. So 1 image to go. So now that we're here and in the swing of things, let's just continue. So that's our last image. So remember, this is combining 2 different filters, a wideband filter and a narrowband filter inside the pupil. I don't know if I have no, I don't have that open anymore. We already reviewed that in another video. So there's 2 different filters here that have been applied. A wideband filter in the 4.44 micron range, and then overlapping with that a 4.7 microns narrowband filter in the pupil. Let's open it here in PixInsight. And since again this is a small file, we expect that the resolution is half of the other images. So let's just go through the same exercise. We'll preview this. This layer is not what we need. This layer is not what we need. This layer is not what we need. And just kind of like, ordinarily I might just close all these images right away. But I just want to be careful and make sure we're not missing anything here. And no, so this is all mosaicked. So don't need all that. So this is the final layer, or the first layer rather. So yeah, so this is the one we want. And just to see that we'll have exactly the same thing as we saw before, and that this image is cropped and scaled and rotated and shifted and whatnot. So lots of things to do in order to align these 2 images. So, but before we'll get there, we'll do the histogram correction. So let's just reset here the what's it called, the auto stretch, the screen auto stretch function. So we'll go here through the what was it called, intensity transformation, histogram transformation. Make sure to reset it. We'll make sure to pick our correct image, 444, 470. We'll make sure to select our preview, so hit right here, and we'll start dragging our midpoint around. Have to drag it quite far in this case. I'll apply this first, and then I'll do that again. Reset our preview, and again I'll drag this midpoint. So, and in fact I want to drag the black point around a little bit as well. And I'll drag this a little bit more. Try to keep this entire histogram contained within the first half of the histogram. And so that looks pretty nice in our preview. And I'll close my preview, and this is the image that we have. So it's not very bright because I'm going to be multiplying these layers inside Photoshop. So I prefer to keep a little leeway here. And yeah, so that's that. And the thing left to do, and I'll just make sure here that I have my zoom to optimal fit selected on both images, because we do remember that was creating some trouble for us before. And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to draw this preview window in here. So I'll go to the icon new preview, and it's going to be somewhere around here, I think. So let's just see if that's true. No, it has to be a little wider. So something like that, a little bit taller as well. So, okay. So I'm just trying to identify, let's say, a part of the image that should coincide. So I think it's pretty good. Pretty good alignment of the two green rectangles. So we're ready now to apply our pre-processing, and we'll do our star alignment. And we'll keep everything as it was before. So our reference image is our 187 image, and we're not drizzling anything, and we are restricting it to the previews. I mean, everything is pretty much default. And so I'll go ahead and drag this triangle on this image here. And this is our final step in this part of the process. So we are detecting the stars in the 187 image. And it's coming up soon, I think. Hopefully it didn't get stuck. No, it didn't. Oh, I'm getting worried there for a second because it got stuck at 83%. But it should find our 3,000 something stars in there. Yeah, 3,720 stars. And waiting for the second part of the process to finish. It's almost done. And we see already the same kind of thing as we saw before. In that, and let's just review this here. And that we detected, there are about 1,000 or so star pair matches in this process. So it did calculate at the end of the day a translation in the x direction of plus 23 pixels, 23.8 to be exact, towards the right. It needed to shift the image down by 63.58 pixels. I'm sorry. It needed to rotate the image by 0.92 degrees, and then to scale it up by a factor of 2.034. So it did all that and calculated this final image. So let's see if that's a match. So I'll try to judge if this matches nicely. And I think it did. It really did. So it did a good job. So I'll save this as, and this is my final step of the process here, as a TIFF image. So again, it appends the underscore registered to the name, and everything looks good. So save it. Make sure to save it as a 16-bit unsigned integer, and we'll save it, and it's done. And so we're done with PixInsight. And let's close all this. We're done with all that. Close PixInsight. So that's not a window we need. Let's go back here and just double check if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 TIFF images. So that's looking good. That's ordered by date modified. Let's just cycle through them just to make sure that all these things are aligned. So I'll open the first one. And it seems to take a few moments to load this image. Can I make this larger? Yes, I can. And I just use the arrow keys here on my keyboard, or I can use these arrow keys here. And I'd like to just judge if these things are aligned carefully. And I have the impression that they are. You can see that all these images look quite different. They were all taken in different wavelengths, and so that's very nice. This viewer does seem to be a little slow. It's continuously calculating these previews. But my first impression is that these images align very nicely. Remember? Not really. No, but I don't know, I have a good feeling about this. All these images are aligned, looking good, and so with that we are done with this part of the process, and we do have our 6 TIFF images that we created, and we're now ready to proceed to the next step, which is to combine these 6 images in Photoshop. And as 6 different layers, and see if we can assign some colors to the different layers and produce a wonderful composite. So, but we'll do that in the next video. So thank you for your attention. I hope you have a nice day, and remember, keep smiling.